joining us, Dan. We've got Dan with us today, and he's going to take us through some cost-effective SEO strategies.
Cool. No, thanks so much for having me, Mariah. And hey, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. And obviously, I hope I can provide a lot of value today. Just quickly about who I am as a person. So I'm Dan. I've been a startup entrepreneur and been a growth marketer for a long time now. So 6 to 7+ years. I actually co-founded one of Australia's top coding schools in the past, founded Australia's largest growth hackers community. So that's full of marketers and digital marketers, particularly in the startup space. I've been lucky enough to be featured in Business Insider, The Next Web, and some other really cool publications as well for, the career I've had so far within startup land. I'm a big fan of making cool projects as well, and I've got some really cool things coming my way. Just a list below here on the slide is that I've got a new daily newsletter I'll be launching very soon. I've got my own personal website. I run a startup at the moment called Scenario, where we share latest case studies and do all these other cool things from a resource point of view. And as a tool, we do financial metrics and everything like that for marketing. And something also to check out as well, if you want to DM me afterwards as well, is that I have a list of 300 plus awesome marketing tools that you can use for your business. If you're interested, definitely hit me up after this presentation. Cool. Next slide. Yeah, cool. So I think, with SEO, it's a pretty big game. Basically, the goal of this presentation, I always want to, make sure that people have is, I want to obviously identify opportunities and easy and affordable SEO marketing strategies. Trying to hit nail on the head for everyone to what I'm saying is that everyone's at different levels when it comes to whether the amount of budget you have, the amount of organic reach you have, et cetera, and website factors, whatever it is. So hopefully today the goal is really to hopefully get a couple of takeaways to at least implement into your SEO strategy, or things to think about more than anything, right? Whether it's right now, or you're going to be tackling SEO in the next 6 months, or even further than that. But hopefully this will fuel a lot of ideas, et cetera, that you can take away and obviously implement. So table of contents wise, basically it's going to be a big overview of things. It's kind of like a detailed checklist per se. So basically I'm going to tap into some key takeaways you need to consider when it comes to SEO. And I'm sure some of you are doing some of this stuff. I'm sure there's things that you aren't doing. But really, this presentation is focusing on the foundation of SEO, because, as I said, SEO is huge, and it matters and differentiates compared to every industry and every vertical you can think of. So I've done my best to tailor what I think is really important and as a priority that everyone that's watching must do as a first step before going to any sort of more advanced SEO strategies, whether it's around backlinks or PR or whatever it is. You have to make sure you get this core stuff done right, and actually have some sort of direction before investing a lot of money or hiring someone to do the work for you. So hopefully what I'll be going over is kind of giving you a good rundown of what I think is a priority, and then basically deciding, picking out things, which matter to you right now, and then working out a priority list. So we'll go next step. Cool. So I touched on this already, but basically just different stages. So again, I recognize with any presentation I do, or even just with any presentation I watch by, other marketers I love, etc. And I think it's very hard to nail a presentation where, one size fits all, especially with such a massive topic, or I guess in many ways a complex marketing strategy around SEO, right? It's no plug and play solution. Every business is different. You've got things to consider, as I said, budget, you've got location, you've got competition, etc. And I think it's really hard to really say, okay, this is the right strategy for you. However, as I said, I think the biggest thing is if you can get 1 to 2 takeaways where hopefully you learn something new, but if not, then it's more of a reiteration of understanding where your SEO strategy fits to help with driving more customers, or generating more reviews, whatever it is for your business. So hopefully, you'll get a lot of value out of today. Cool. And one thing that I always make sure to include in every presentation is for everyone to think where not SEO, but even just how the other channels can actually help towards the ultimate marketing goal. And basically, I have a thing called, obviously there's I'm sure everyone knows there's a marketing funnel. So you've got things, around obviously top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel. Top of the funnel is acquisition and basically driving people to your website or obviously to your different channels, or let alone obviously ultimately your cafe. But then it's also about working out ways to obviously leverage like your existing customers and stuff. Like you don't want to just keep working hard for acquisition all the time. You want to leverage the social proof and also, make sure you reward yourself in many ways of the hard work you've already done to bring people to your cafe or bring people to your website or bring people to your social channels. Like how can you leverage that sort of content and how can you leverage existing customers to help you basically replenish the top of the funnel to drive more customers, right? I think there's actually a big thing in this diagram that I probably didn't include is like an arrow from the customer advocacy from the bottom to the top, because basically it's like a revolving wheel or flywheel in many ways in terms of generating more customers. So again, I touch on this just to make sure to keep this in mind when it comes to any sort of marketing, and even with SEO, it touches all parts of the funnel. So everything from acquisition, then obviously to customer advocacy, to loyalty, and obviously ultimately referrals, right? We'll just keep this in mind. So what I'll do today is I've got 8 key strategies, 8 key tactics for you guys from a foundational, from an SEO foundation point of view. So we'll kick things off. Okay, so I think one of the key things that you need to be doing before any sort of really key SEO activity or investing a significant amount of funds into any sort of strategy or content marketing, whatever it is you obviously need to define your SEO or content direction, right? It has to have some sort of meaning behind it. And so what I mean is, you don't need to have this huge 20-page content strategy and SEO strategy in order to generate more customers for your cafe. It's not feasible. And realistically, if you get something as big as that, then you're most likely not going to be able to action much at all. I think one of the key things that you really need to be doing as a cafe or business owner is work out what are the quick and easy wins that can set up the right foundation that then when you do decide to invest more or want to explore further advanced strategies, that you've got the right things in place. So I think the biggest thing with SEO that I can recommend is it is harder these days, especially because Google's now more of a pay to play model. So obviously, I'm sure if you look up key searches for whatever it is and stuff, you see different ads, etc. But I think what's important is understanding what are the sort of keywords or what are the sort of things you want to be going after for and be discovered. So I think one thing that can really help as a useful tip when you do any sort of SEO strategy is look at some of the your top competitors or even other cafes that you may know of that you've probably been inspired by their marketing before, or you may have heard their name, everywhere, right? And I think it's really good to even see what they're doing on their point of view and what they're doing in their strategy, and kind of in many ways reverse engineering what they're doing from an organic point of view, if they're running ads, whatever it is and stuff. And I think that way they'll actually help you a long way for yourself more than anyone to see what are they doing and you doing that, but doing it even better. And I think that's the key, right? Like you don't actually have to reinvent the wheel, especially when it comes to SEO, because if it's working for them, then there's no reason why it can't work for you. I think if you can see what they're doing and do it better, then it can go a really long way to accelerating your SEO and content growth. One tool that I use for clients that I work with, or even for obviously my own startup business, is Ahrefs. It is a paid tool, but the beautiful thing is you can sign up for 1 month and pay for 1 month. It's like $99 or whatever, and you can export results, etc. And basically, figure out what sort of strategy or backlinks or whatever it is that your potential competitors are doing, and see what you can take away from learnings to help with your overall strategy. Cool. So as part of the strategy as well is doing keyword research. This is a hard one, and I think when it comes to expectations around SEO, especially if you run a cafe, because at the end of the day, SEO is meant to play a role with generating actual people coming to your cafe. It's not about trying to generate 1,000 visitors on your website for the sake of it per month, right? like you need to be strategic around the keywords that you choose in the strategy you go after. I think when it comes to user, I think also what's important is think about from a user behavior point of view. So look, you're not going to get really many people, in my opinion, I don't do it really anyway and stuff. If I'm looking for a cafe, I don't necessarily like Sydney cafes as a search, right? Like people just don't tend to do that. They tend to say, what are the best cafes in Surrey Hills, as an example? And I think that's the sort of strategies. And how can you work out ways to produce content and optimize for SEO around those particular long tail keywords? I think just quickly, when it comes to keyword research, there's really three primary keyword groupings to think about. So there's obviously high level cafe terms. So, cafes or Sydney cafes, very, very generic and very broad. I mean, if you rank for these, amazing, but it's not something that you really should aim for, because the user intent is not necessarily maybe looking for a cafe that they want to attend to. Yes, it might generate a lot of traffic, but doesn't really think. I think that's kind of the holy grail, but I can say right now, those are super, super competitive. And it's definitely not something from an expectation of goals that you should be aiming for. Then you've obviously got niche specific terms. So I think about ways of standing out, or what are your unique selling proposition, or USPs, I call them, right, for different businesses, but ways that your cafe stands out compared to potentially other competitors or people in your area. And I think obviously a very, very simple cafe come up was a cat cafe. So like obviously that's a very specific term that people are going for, and that's what you want to make sure that if you run a cat cafe, you ideally want to be found within this search. So how can you figure out the right strategy and the right content to try and rank for cat cafe in Sydney? And which I'll get to examples, I guess, in terms of things to think about that can optimize for. But I think, look, if you do struggle to work out what are your kind of unique propositions, right? Then I think one of the things that's really critical and that's often overlooked is making sure that your brand terms. So, for example, Jim's Cafe. I don't know if there's a Jim's Cafe owner here, but basically, if people are aware of Jim's Cafe, they might have seen a Facebook ad or whatever it is, any part of marketing. Then obviously they're going to put that direct search into Google, which is your cafe, and you need to make sure that your term and everything is presented beautifully and up to date and looking really schmick when someone goes for that term, because basically someone's obviously heard about your cafe from whatever angle it is or through a friend. You want to make sure you impress them from the day dot. So don't underestimate the ability to make sure you absolutely optimize for brand terms for your name, and which now I'll get into the next slides around obviously optimizing for that. So one of the first things that you need to be doing to optimize for brand terms is your local directories and citations. So again, if you're looking up on Jim's Cafe, you're obviously going to see most likely your website at the top of it. Not always, but most of the time. And then obviously another thing which we'll get into is obviously, as you can see, Google My Business listing. You might see the likes of Yelp, Bean Hunter, which is another one. Like there's quite a few different local directories and citations. You need to make sure you're across all of these, and you need to make sure they're accurate, and you absolutely need to make sure that there's reviews on them and showing that you have a presence that you're applying and interacting with anyone who leaves any sort of information outside of your control on these different websites, because basically this is your brand. Like this is what you need to be doing, and customer service equals marketing. And if you show that there's a response, you show there's activity, and you show there's livelihood and shows a good presence, and that way you'll be able to actually make sure you can do your absolute best to get those people who search for your cafe into the actual cafe to pay, right? Look, it's very hard to track this. Like you'll never truly know the right answer of how effective, something is to then converting it to a cafe. But again, it's just that overall presence and really thinking about how someone, even the likes of yourself, if you're going to go to a restaurant or whatever it is and stuff, what you want to be seeing and what's going to help you get over the line, and do that. Like really make sure it's really fleshed out to make sure that people can see your digital channel. So local and directories and citations are really, really important to make sure that you're across as many as you can. The information absolutely has to be correct. And obviously uploading as much valuable but also relevant content as well. So again, the imagery, etc., is quite important. Next step. So yeah, basically, I've kind of got a bit of important sites, I think, in terms of cafe world, but of course, you guys may know better than I do, and also a bit of an action plan. So obviously, yeah, making sure that you're on Google My Business listing. That's super, super important. It's probably the number one priority that you need to make sure of. Of course, I'm sure you're on the likes of Facebook and Instagram. There's obviously True Local. There's Bing Business, there's Yellow Pages, Yelp, and again, there's lots of different other niche sites as well, like Bean Hunter, and I'm sure there's other ones as well to make sure of, to be a part of. As I said, critical that information is up to date and regularly updated. An action plan. So again, here's an important checklist that you should be doing every 2 to 3 days. So you've got posting social media imagery, share happy customer reviews, share news or special offers. And I think ideally doing it once a week to keep things active. Maybe like a dish of the week, or one photo of a customer as well to show social proof. And I get actually to this later down the track, but I think what a lot of people think is, or even owners or business owners, whatever it is, we're all busy, right? And I'm super conscious of time as well, trust me, more than anyone. But basically, I think it's really important that once you do this stuff, you know that you can repurpose this content onto other different channels. So if you post social imagery on the likes of Facebook, you can post that on your Google My Business listing. You can post it on your Yelp profile. You can, share on Instagram stories. You can, share it in other places I might have not thought of as well, right? And I think that's the sort of mindset I want you guys to, more than anything, to take away from, to know that whilst I know this stuff is time investment, it's just so crucial and can be such a big advantage for your business to get people coming to your cafe. But don't think that you just have to create everything uniquely every single time and it's only done once on one channel. Think about ways and give an understanding of your processes in order to then share that content as much as you can, that it's still relevant and it's unique to a point. But yeah, just don't think you have to just do one thing for one channel, etc., and that's done. Work out ways that you can share it everywhere. Cool. Next question. Next slide. Now, reviews. I think this is something that is often overlooked by, I think, a lot of businesses in general. And when it comes to local SEO and local search, like this is absolutely pivotal to make sure you can do as much as you can to generate reviews. Reviews are one of the most important, or even not just most important, obviously, but just in terms of the cheapest way to do marketing for your business. Like this is social proof. Like nothing ever beats social proof when it comes to not just SEO, but even just anyone coming to your cafe or acquisition in the first place, right? No one's going to come to your cafe if they look up, but there's only 2.5 out of 5 stars. Hopefully there's no one here that does that, but basically it's not a good look. Although I have noticed a lot of businesses just in general probably actually don't respond to reviews or just kind of leave 2.5 up there. And maybe I've been to the restaurant before or the cafe and I'm thinking to myself, what, really? Like, no way. And look, it might be just a really dissatisfied customer or two, and maybe they only have like 3 reviews. So, the star rating's kind of skewed. It doesn't look great, but it's just so important that you're always on this. And I think it costs $0 really to ask people or find ways to put reviews on the likes of your Google business listing or other particular sites. I think, basically when anyone looks up restaurants or cafes, and I do tend to do it frequently, like if I see poor reviews, like that can really deter my decision of wanting to go to your cafe or go to your restaurant, right? And I think I'm realistic. I think customers are realistic as well. Like you can't just have 5 out of 5 either, right? Like, but it needs to look active. It needs to, have the likes of at least 20 plus reviews as kind of like a bit of a benchmark and standard for yourself to make sure to do. Because again, it just shows that initial perception that, there's obviously your cafe's busy. So the more reviews kind of shows that, okay, wow, a lot of people do go here, because not everyone does it. But also, not every cafe or, restaurant or whatever it is perfect, right? So I think if you can do your absolute best to ask loyal customers, or obviously your maybe mates, don't overdo it, but maybe mates who've been to a cafe at least from time to time, maybe have a photo or whatever it is, to leave a review on the likes of Google My Business Listing or Facebook and stuff, and how crucial it is. And the reason why it's crucial is that star ratings also show up on obviously Google. So you obviously got star ratings on Google My Business listing. You can actually have reviews obviously come up on the likes of your Facebook page, especially if you're, people, type in Jim's Cafe and Facebook, your Facebook page is item number 3 on the search. And then typically you can obviously see the star rating. So if you can have that on, and there's a setting in your Facebook page to have that on or not, but it's great to leave it on, especially if you have really, really positive reviews. And people just start seeing these stars, which really attract people's attention and obviously ultimately increase the click-through rate, which basically means, in its simplest term, that people are actually clicking on the link and going to it to find out more information. And that way it gives people a much better overall experience and trust factor more than anything that your cafe is really, really good to attend to. So this is definitely something, and again, it really comes down to yourself as an owner who knows better than anyone and knows your customers more than anyone to work out who are, say, 10 people or 10 customers that I know regularly, and ask them to say, hey, look, free coffee on us next time you come into the store. Love if you could just leave a quick review and stuff about who we are as a cafe and what we're about, etc. It will go a long way to helping our business, especially during a time like COVID or post-COVID, but even just in general, just in terms of growing the business and stuff. And I say most of the time, people are obviously going to say yes, so I just don't see any harm.
We've all gone to a cafe before that we just went to because everyone's talking about it and so much hype.
Yeah, and I think if anything, like especially if you're a cafe that has a lot of hype or whatever it is, like take advantage of it, right? Like if people are talking about it, then it's a great time to then ask. And actually, sorry, yeah, I just totally forgot. Like my next slide is obviously generating reviews. So again, review sites, you've got them all to the left, and I'm sure there's other ones that you guys can think of or whatever matters to you most. But I think when it comes to generating reviews, I think ask the top loyal customers, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe as a countertop display where you say, hey, if you really enjoyed our cafe, this is more maybe for first-time customers. Love if you could leave a review and stuff. It helps grow our business. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, by the way, from a messaging point of view, like it helps grow our business. Like, end of the day, you're a small business. I think a lot of people have empathy for small businesses, especially more than ever at this time. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, like this actually helps with our growth. Obviously, customer service, like incentive, like in person. Don't do it online and stuff with asking people for reviews on Facebook or Google for that matter, because Google can pick that stuff up. So actually don't do it online, but offline, it's okay to, say, hey, look, we'd love some help if you don't mind leaving a review on XYZ.
Not favorable.
Yeah, look, no. Yeah, so it's an interesting one. Like I'm obviously know SEO well to an extent, but I think what's also probably important for everyone to know is that, Google changes stuff all the time, right? And I think Google's getting much smarter and better at, anyone who tries to game the system, if that makes sense, in its simplest term. So I always, as a safeguard, like not to post everywhere saying, hey, love you if you could leave a review on your Facebook page and everywhere else, right? I think it does need to be done offline because it needs to feel much more generic and much more natural. And it shouldn't be forced to, trying to, I guess, as I said, like it's kind of like gaming the system, right? Like I think Google's getting much smarter at picking that sort of stuff up. Also think as a quick thing, guys, as well, watching it, is that, now when asking for customers, make sure you're not getting like 5 reviews in one day kind of thing as well. Like you need to spread it out. Like it shouldn't happen. Like it needs, I think, really just be smart. Like it just needs to feel organic and natural. That's the point of it, right? Like you can't just ask 100 people to review in the next 2 days kind of thing, right? It won't make sense. And Google's smart enough to pick that up because it's like, okay, I haven't seen reviews maybe for a while, and then suddenly I've got 100 reviews in 2 days. It's like, what's going on here? And so if anything can actually work against you. So just don't do that either. I think, again, the purpose of it is that it needs to feel organic, but it also needs to be on top of mind that you're consistently asking with anyone that is close to your business to help you out, because it does help, right? So I think look, don't quote me on that either because it is a hard one, but I think I can say as well that it makes sense that Google would also pick up the fact that if you start asking people everywhere online or on your Facebook page or whatever it is to leave a review, then like they're smart enough to pick that up and index it and potentially could find pathways to say, hey, like there may be gaming the system sort of thing. So just be a little bit careful with that sort of stuff. But again, as I said, like Google changes stuff all the time. So it's just, and they pick up on anything that's, or anyone that's trying to game stuff. As an example, very very quickly, is just that I think, obviously, I'm sure within SEO maybe before, is that a lot of people have always tried to get as many backlinks as possible to their website. And yes, backlinks are good for your website, but Google now is picking up anyone who tries to do that, and actually say, like, you shouldn't be reaching out to a lot of people just to get backlinks to your website to improve your rankings, because it's not natural. In many ways, you're asking people just to do it for the sake of it so you can rank your website harder. But obviously, Google doesn't want that. Google wants the most organic and most authentic way of sharing content for what people are looking for. So yeah, just don't, whatever you do and stuff, don't try and find ways to game Google. Google's about serving up information for its users or its customers, which is all of us, right? Because we all use Google, to give them the best possible information. I think that's what you have to remember. So anything around reviews and stuff, don't ask online, preferably just ask in person and say, hey, look, like, it would help a lot. As someone who's been coming to the cafe for 6+ months, if you could leave a review when you have the chance, no obligation, but if you can, that would be amazing. And once that starts adding up and stuff, it pays off in the long run. Cool. So I touched on this before. Obviously, it's one of the really most important, I guess, local citations that you guys can have, is obviously Google My Business Listing. This is obviously quite important in terms of not just what's found on your search term, brand term, but also what can be discovered, when people look up for cafes in Surrey Hills, if you're located in Surrey Hills, but also found on maps as well, which a lot of people use maps to, if they're walking throughout the suburb of Surrey Hills, they want to see what maybe the closest cafe is, but even before they decide, which is the best cafe, they're probably going to find and look and see who has the most up-to-date information, who's open, who looks like they have a lot of reviews. So they obviously must be really happy, the amount of check-ins, whatever it is, maybe answered questions, beautiful imagery, like all this stuff, right? And sharing of updates as well. Like, Google is really prioritizing Google My Business Listing as well to share, to show off to its users of, special offers that you can put up within statuses or posts within My Google Business Listing, and people can find that stuff if it's connected to your name. And it's 10% off. Sorry, that's not maybe the best example, but get one coffee and receive another one free for your friend if you come in a cafe before the lunch period, so 12 p.m. Not the best example of all time, but you get my point. Is that if you can find ways to work out offers, or I guess little points of where you can bring in people to bring in more foot traffic, then that goes to a long way to trying to, obviously get more people in a cafe. And look, to be transparent, it's not going to happen all at once. If you just start doing it, you're just not going to get a flood of customers coming in. But if you do that consistently over time and stuff, then people will start to notice, and people will start recommending or whatever it is and stuff, especially if they come through one of those offers or one of those posts. So I think that's obviously really critical to remember. And I think, and again, don't quote me on this, but Google does like signals of activity. So if they know that someone's updating their Google Business Listing or just things in general, then it just shows that obviously, wow, this website or this, this business is keeping their stuff up to date. They don't say prioritize, but they just know that that people would probably maybe prefer this particular search result. So just remember that, all these little signals and stuff do help with SEO. So if you can post stuff on social media or, Google Business Listing and stuff, when you have the time, then it's definitely worth doing it. Obviously this is, kind of talked on the next slide, but if you can do this 2 to 3 times a week, and I've shared a bit of a screenshot. And again, it might be a little bit different in terms of the layout of Google My Business Listing for different people as well. Again, Google changes stuff all the time. As you can see, it's the post menu. So if you can make sure to maybe post 2 to 3 times a week, I definitely recommend it. And again, just to stress on the matter of making sure your details are up to date. That's so critical. Like even just opening hours around public holidays or whatever it is, the amount of times I've actually done that myself, where I looked up a business only to turn up a couple of times and it's the wrong information because I looked at the Google My Business Listing and maybe it's just on the website it wasn't clear either, but then found it shut, and it's just frustrating. Like, it didn't deter me off, but I think for a lot of people or a lot of consumers it would, right? So I think just make sure that Google My Business Listening more out of all the directories or out of all the citations per se for your business, like make sure to update that as much as you can. And I think Google is also very good. If you have your email notifications on, that you can, they remind you of that sort of stuff as well with any sort of public holidays most of the time, but just double check maybe, every week at least and stuff that your details are up to date, opening times are up to date, or if anything's changing, just make sure to do it. And I think, again, obviously the description and obviously of adding photos. So again, keywords around, what you want to try and rank for, make sure to try and fit into your description, and obviously add photos regularly as well. Beautiful imagery of your food, beautiful imagery of your coffee, happy customers, whatever it is really, really important. Cool. So look, when it comes to social media, like from a content strategy point of view, I mean, you guys, if you run a cafe, it's very rare to know anyone who doesn't know how to, take beautiful photos or do nice imagery, etc. And I think there's so much content or articles out there to show you how to do this. I'm sure you've got favorite cafes or competitors that you look at as well. So I want to go into the detail of, what you should be doing and stuff. But again, I think what is important to iterate again is that if someone types in Jim's Cafe as an example I use into Google, and obviously they see the website first, they see the Google My Business listing on the right, then what about all the other listings? Probably going to see the Instagram page, probably going to see the Facebook page, you're going to probably see Yelp, whatever it is. Remember, anything that you post on Instagram, you can then use as an Instagram story. You can then use on your Google My Business listing. You can then use it on Twitter if you have it, or you can use it on Yelp, whatever it is. Like, again, like just think about from that sort of repurposing side of things and distribution. Like, if you're posting on one thing on one channel, you can then start using it for other things, right? I'm more talking around imagery and videos and stuff, rather than say blogs or direct copy and paste and stuff is not the best practice. But again, working out ways to use some of this content where you go the effort of obviously doing it in the first place, then share it around, right? So I think that's quite important. Next slide. Cool. And again, I won't go into the detail, but obviously there's a lot of different evergreen type content strategies you can do around photos and videos, as well as then kind of like the buzz type strategies. And buzz, what I mean is like kind of short term, how can you try and bring in people faster than longer? But it needs to be a mix. You can't just be running competitions every week, of course, but can you do a rough competition every month? Could you do some sort of product bundling sort of thing with a partner, some sort of partner within, your local area, or, doing something for charity for 1 month, maybe helping one new charity each month sort of thing, right? And it's those little things that can help drive people obviously through social, and then once you share everywhere else and stuff, like this is the sort of stuff again where this is the sort of content that becomes more shareable, right? Because that's the thing as well. Like, it's one thing for you to actually produce the content or to do the videos and stuff, but there's another thing altogether for people to actually share it with their friends. And once they start sharing it with their friends, then lots of things can happen. Obviously, you get referrals, then people obviously got an interest. There's more people clicking into your website, whatever it is. Like, it's these things and stuff. You want to try and get people who follow your accounts, or obviously loyal customers, to help you in many ways do the work, right? Like, they are your best advocacies. Like, they're kind of like in many ways, your little influencers for your cafe. And I think that's things to think about. Like, you don't need to get, Kim Kardashian to do something for your cafe, or, influencers of Bondi. Like, you can actually get real people who experience your cafe and love obviously what you make, or, the coffee you do, etc. They're your best people to help you spread the word about your cafe. So again, it's all these little things that add up that can complement social media and your SEO efforts to provide more signals and to get more people searching for your brand name, or searching for your cafe name. And again, once they start searching for your cafe name and they go onto Google and they see all these, great reviews and beautiful imagery and very active links, whatever it is and stuff, then it has that presence of, wow, these guys look really busy. They look really cool. I definitely have to go check it out and stuff. And then fingers crossed, they then become another awesome loyal customer. So then obviously a big thing with SEO and stuff I'm sure you guys all know of is obviously content marketing on blog writing. Now, I left this kind of obviously second last really because I know for a fact that this is one of the hardest things to do from an execution point of view in terms of money, but also time, right? Like it takes time to write really good content. It's things that people are going to read and make sure that it's good enough content as well that, reflects your brand more than anything, right? You just don't want to write crap stuff. Like I've seen a lot of bad content and it actually does reflect the brand. I'm like, it's poorly written or it's just like not engaging, whatever it is. And it's just like, yeah, maybe these are the kind of people or the product I don't want to subscribe to, or maybe it's not really the restaurant I want to go to, as an example, right? And I think that's what's important to think about. And I think what I say is that content marketing and blog writing is definitely a really, really big help when it comes to developing your SEO strategy and be found more. But it's not something there's no shortcut for this either. So I think when it comes to this, and I think I go to the next slide, is to, I guess, focus on content that that you can write, or at least obviously someone's part of your cafe, or if you do look for someone to hire to do this, then just make sure you hit the low hanging fruit first. Don't go for really, really generic sort of blog posts that probably have no relevance to your cafe. So just think about stuff that really matters. So again, like to help with your, defining your cafe content strategy would be the likes of, really free questions. Where do my customers go for information? What information are they looking for? How does it fit in my business? And I think if you keep these three things in mind and work out ways of, content, blog ideas that you can produce, there's obviously new menu items and story behind them. I don't know if there's particular ingredients or, maybe it's a dish that's originating from overseas. So you can talk about that. And, don't have to go in super depth. Take lots of different photos and write bullet points. Maybe it's a bit of a recipe. Story about you as a founder, like why are you doing this cafe? Like what is your mission and purpose? And then sharing that everywhere. I think one thing that you probably could be doing that can help with SEO to do quicker is, kind of like top things to do in the area. So it could be like, top 5 things to do in Surrey Hills on a Sunday, as an example, right? I'm not saying that's the best example, but again, as an example where you can obviously talk about maybe there's 5 key activities, but then you can obviously, loop in within the content about your cafe and that you maybe have a special deal on Sundays and stuff that people can do, right? And look, that's not going to just generate a lot of traffic at first, but it can add up over time if you start doing quite a few of them, particularly if it's around your local area, because then they'll see Jim's Cafe in Surrey Hills has a few posts around that term and stuff, and that way, hopefully you'll get a lot of people thinking, oh wow, these guys are one of the top cafes in Surrey Hills. I definitely need to go and check them out. So I think that's the sort of thing if you can work out ways to incorporate not just everything about your cafe either, because then people are just like, oh, these guys just talk too much about themselves. So again, it's just being a little bit smart and clever, but you still have to have strategy and purpose around it that it's reflecting your brand in a really positive way. And then obviously you can do content on, blog ideas around changes to the menu, answers to common questions, local events, community news, partnerships. I know I said coffee bean story, that might not be the right one, but it's up to you guys. Suggestion lists, maybe it's, 5, 5 of your favorite chefs as an example and why, and maybe how it reflects your brand or, how it's inspired your brand. And of course, then customer reviews, involvement posts as well, I think is a good one. And I think as well, when it comes to content marketing, like not everything just has to be like 2,000 word blog. Like you can use videos, right? Videos are a great way to communicate and to show and highlight people about your brand as well. Like people love visual stuff; they want engagement, right? I think that's the biggest thing to remember as well. It's about how do you get people to engage, right? That's what you want. It's not just seeing stuff. Like it's like, oh wow, this is really cool. I definitely need to check it out, or I want to comment on it saying this is beautiful, whatever it is, right? So I think that's obviously quite important to think about what's going to be most engaging and hopefully derive an action. Next slide. Yeah, and I think I brought this up a few times in the webinar, guys. But I think another thing to think about as well is around, you don't have to do one piece of content for one channel and that's it, right? Like you should think about it in a way, like as an example, if you, I just realized I put an example in this slide as well, of course, like, top 5 ways to enjoy your latte in Sydney. Again, not the best example, but the point is that, okay, I do this blog post, I've done 1,000 words, it took me 2 hours to do. And, that's, 2 hours is 2 hours, right? Like, and obviously you're doing it outside of this, your cafe time. You're probably really tired after a long day. So it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff to do, right? And I get it. But like, if you think about it this way as an example, so you do that blog post, you put the effort into it. Now with the blog post is that now you can maybe schedule it. Obviously, you put it on your website, and then you can obviously take snippets out of it and regurgitate that content onto different channels. So, for example, you share the post on your Google My Business listing. You take a key quote out of the article and put it onto your Instagram story, or you put it as an Instagram post. Then you can put it on your Facebook. That's like 4 different pieces of stuff out of that one content piece. And even then, within your different content piece, there could be like other key takeaways. You really want to make sure people, make sure they read the article or make sure they get out of it. And of course, once you start posting these different things on different channels, in a unique way, and then obviously include a link going back to the article, then you give yourself the best possible chance for people to see your article as much as you can for pretty much no money, right? Apart from really your time. And again, it just shows you're building up that sort of engagement, etc. It's about making sure you can get as much out of it as you can. I think one tip is like, don't copy and paste your article that you put on your website and then copy and paste on your Instagram post, or copy and paste it onto Facebook or wherever it is and stuff. Like, you need to think about it in a way where it makes sense for that particular channel. That is obviously going to, give people like that taste, right? So it could be 2 sentences about the article and then obviously a link to the article, right? So I think you can do that in different ways, even out of that one content piece. And then again, you start replicating that process with other content pieces you write. Then the next thing you know, you might have scheduled posts for the next 6 months out of like 5 content pieces. Not even kidding, right? Like, as an example, alongside everything else. So again, it's just thinking about ways like that where you don't get into this mindset thinking, I've just gone to the effort of doing something and I only do it once and that's it. Like, there's no way I can use this again. That's completely rubbish. Like, you can use it for so many different things over a certain amount of time. So I think you need to, if there's anything that, regardless if you're really advanced when it comes to SEO or just in general with your cafe, you're really confident with your marketing, yeah, I'm sure you are, but how can you work out ways to repurpose stuff that you've already done to then bring in more customers? That's definitely a challenge for anyone who's really advanced around this topic and stuff that I definitely encourage to make sure that they're on top of and do regularly, right? And of course, if you're a beginner too, like, hopefully this does help in terms of thinking that it gets you over the mental barrier, because I do know the mental barrier when it comes to running blog posts or it comes to producing any sort of content. It's so important. It takes so much time, especially when you've got to run a business and stuff. But if you have this mindset of, I know I can use this for lots of different things, then, and reuse it and repurpose it, then, that's a beautiful thing, right? Like, you can do some really, really good stuff with it. So I can definitely say this adds up over time, and it's helped with a lot of my businesses and startups that I've helped advise in the past as well. Not this question, but I think, I think when it comes to tools and stuff, I prefer obviously things that you don't pay for. So I think really quickly, if you make sure you get your notes out, or if you obviously, seeing this presentation, look up on Google, is that obviously Uber Suggest is probably one of the top ones that I suggest that you should use. It's a free tool by one of my favorite marketers, Neil Patel, very, very advanced marketer. It's a tool that you can see kind of the rough keywords in a particular area, or obviously the top performing blog post based on a certain keyword, whatever it is. Look, it goes to a certain extent. Obviously, nothing's just purely for free. He does have a paid plan and stuff for his tool and stuff. I think it starts from $29 a month. As I said, it's not something you have to subscribe to for a year or anything. Like, maybe subscribe to it to a couple of months and get the right data that you need to help with maybe formulating a strategy, or just obviously pointing in the right direction, or priority of what blog post to write. Obviously, I've got Google My Business listing there. That's the big Google thing. There's other paid tools. So I've obviously got keyword tools, SpyFu, Ahrefs, and there's Yoast if you use a WordPress site. Although there's, depending on your content management system or where your website's hosted, I think, all those different providers have little tools and stuff to optimize for SEO, which I definitely encourage. I think, if you want to, as I said, one of the first strategies right at the top is that I'm a big believer, if you can work out what your top competitors are potentially doing, then that can help you already in the right direction to understand, okay, they're doing this, like I should be doing this, but I can do it a lot better than they can. And that's the sort of, I guess, what I actually even do with some of the competitor research I do in my space, right? And SEO gets a lot more complex on that side of things. But again, that it helps me so much when I know I don't have to just completely reinvent the wheel and come up with these awesome ideas and stuff out of nowhere, right? See what they do and then say, oh, actually, okay, I can see they're doing this, or they're getting content posted on this site a lot. I should find another site that does very similar, but it's a better site, or it's like I can produce content that's much better and much more engaging, as an example, right? So it's just thinking that sort of mentality as well with these tools. So yeah, and then I had a blog post of around 23 best free marketing tools to grow your startup on the scenario blog. So definitely, yeah, check that out if you can. It's not all about SEO, but it does include a couple of SEO tools to help you consider, for your growth. Yeah, and I think, I guess that's really the end of the presentation, guys. There's another thing I'll share very soon as well around prioritization of ideas and what I use. But I guess if you have any sort of questions around advanced SEO strategies or tactics and stuff now, yeah, feel free to email me. Of course, I'm very happy to, or obviously leave any questions in the chat, and Mariah can obviously help pass them on to me, or I can do a follow-up presentation one time if you have more advanced questions. I wouldn't say like I'm definitely no super advanced SEO guru, but I know it enough that it's helped me, bring in a lot of revenue from my different businesses that I've been a part of. And as I said, like SEO can get really, really complex, and depending on the business and stuff. And I think if there's any takeaway from you guys is just don't overthink SEO. Like it's not the be all end all that's going to help, generate another 100K for your, cafe business overnight kind of thing. Like there's just so many factors in play. But I think if you make sure you have the right foundations in place and the right strategies and doing the things, consistently, then it pays off over time, right? And can help out with your overall marketing strategy. So again, if you do have any sort of questions and stuff, or want to get in contact, that's obviously my email. And then basically the last thing I wanted you guys to take away and stuff is like, how should you prioritize your marketing? Your next slide. So obviously, there's a lot of things when it comes to marketing overall for your cafe or any business that you run. And I think it can obviously get very overwhelming about like, okay, I've got all these things to do, but what's going to be the thing that actually gets me towards my goal quicker rather than later? So look, I mean, this is just a pure example, right? This is obviously not just SEO and stuff. This is for a client that I used it for, or use this strategy for, to help prioritize what they should be focusing on. And so basically, I've included, like, obviously there was things around reduce image sizes, and I thought to myself, that was one of the things that was actually, funnily enough, slowing down his website the most. And I thought to myself, okay, like if this is slowing down his website, then obviously that actually does have an impact on rankings, by the way. So definitely optimize as much as you can when it comes to your website. But I think that was one of the things I noticed that could potentially be affecting some of his paid campaigns, because he was running lots of Google ads and Facebook ads and spending all this money. And yet the experience when someone clicks on that ad to go to the website wasn't the best. And it was because I identified that the images were loading too slow. So I said, that's one of the first things we actually have to do right now, because the Google ads, as an example, was working for him. But yet he could, probably produce better results if he had a faster website. So I said, one of the first things that you need to do is optimize the images. So that was obviously one of the first things we did. And basically I characterized it that obviously by impact, confidence, and ease. So it's called the ICE method. It was originally, originated from one of my favorite growth marketers or growth hackers per se, named Sean Ellis. Funnily enough, he was the guy who coined growth hacking, if you've ever heard of it before. Super nice guy. But basically, it was one of his strategies that he uses to prioritize, what are the top marketing initiatives or priorities that need to be done. And so basically, I just do impact. So it's obviously, is this actually going to make an impact on the business? Confidence, do I actually have confidence it's going to make an impact on the business? And then obviously ease. So for example, obviously 5, and ease was 4. So it wasn't, 4 out of 5, because, have to get other tools to help do those images, but it's fairly quick. And I guess in many ways, then it accumulates a total score of 14 out of 15. So I was like, okay, this is definitely one of the top priorities that we need to do that I feel is going to have an impact on the business or impact on the campaigns. And yeah, and obviously there's other initiatives there, but I think for you guys as well, like this is a good potential activity to do. Very simple to do. Go on Google Sheets or use Excel. You just do it yourself, and work out ways. Okay, what is the easiest thing that I can do? What do I feel like it's gonna be more confident that's actually gonna hopefully drive a result? And then obviously the impact, like, is it actually gonna help bring in more customers for my business? And I think if you can work out priorities on that with SEO or just even just in general, like with any sort of marketing stuff that you do, I think it does help to work out, okay, this is what I should prioritize as something that's going to help my business. And then obviously, probably what I haven't included on the far right or something is like a bit of like a notes column. So say, oh, okay, this actually worked, or maybe another column saying date, saying I actually implemented or started doing this, and then reflect on it. Like, did it actually do what you thought originally was going to do, like in terms of the scoring and stuff? And I think then, you know, if you do this stuff over time, then it can help you work out, okay, like this works, this doesn't work. Let's go back to what's working and double down on it and do better at it. And if it's obviously working and bringing more customers, then you should be doing that thing and do it more often and do it better. So, yeah. And so, look, I think that's the end of my presentation and stuff, guys. Again, as I said, reach out to me via email and stuff if you have any more questions. Of course, ask Mariah or leave any comments in the chat thing on this webinar and stuff. And look, if there's lots of questions and stuff around more advanced things or things that didn't make sense or you need to go more time into and stuff, I've already offered to Mariah that I'm very happy to do a follow-up sort of webinar or presentation if there's more advanced topics that you guys need to get clarity on or whatever it is. Yeah, and I think, yeah, hopefully you really enjoyed it. Sorry for my poor examples and stuff, but hopefully you kind of get the gist.
Fantastic presentation. Thank you so much, Dan. I think key takeaways, there's so many things such as updating your reviews, posting regularly that you can literally checklist and look at each week, and just doing those small things will really make a difference overall. SEO is not a quick turnaround thing. It's something that you build up over time and you invest in, and all super helpful tips. Thank you so much, Dan.
No worries. Thanks, Mariah, and thanks everyone. And have a great day.